We now begin factoring trinomials, which have three terms. Now I'd like to call attention to two different patterns. One is x squared plus bx plus c, which is what we're going to begin with, and then ax squared plus bx plus c, which has a leading coefficient that's not 1. And this this leading coefficient is going to require that we do something a little bit different as we move into this lesson. Let's look at what we have here. Factoring is a division process, and the answer to a factoring problem should be multiplication. What we want to do is we want to break this up into two parentheses such that the first terms of FOIL give us x squared, the last terms of FOIL give us 16, and the two middle terms add or subtract together to give us 16. So basically we are looking for two numbers that will multiply to make 16 and either add or subtract to make 10. Well, the factors of 16 are 1 times 16, 2 times 8, or 4 times 4. And notice that the 2 plus 8 is going to add together to be 10 if we do the addition. So this tells us when we go to factor this, each parentheses will begin with an 8. They will end with a 2 and an 8, so that the L part of FOIL, 2 times 8, makes a 16. And we need a positive 2 and a positive 8, so that the 2x and the 8x together add up to make the 10x. Notice when you factor, we have a multiplication problem as our answer. In this next problem, we are looking for two numbers that multiply together to make 18. Well, we'd have 1 times 18, 2 times 9, or 3 times 6. Well, which of them, when you add or subtract, will make a negative 3 in the middle? If it was a positive 3 and a minus 6, that would add up to a negative 3. So I think we have our winners here. This will factor into two parentheses, beginning with x in each. I will give it a plus 3 and a minus 6, and in my head I will mentally check f, x times x makes the x squared. Outer and inner, that's a minus 6x and a plus 3x that do add up to minus 3. And then the L part of FOIL, positive 3 times negative 6 does make negative 18, and everything does check. These are very checkable problems. Moving on, here we go again. X and x, we need two numbers that multiply together to be 40. 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, 5 times 8. Will any of them add or subtract to make 6? Yes. Positive 4 and minus 10 add up to make negative 6. So x plus 4 and x minus 10 are the two factors. And you do again want to go through and check each term of FOIL to make sure this works. Here we go. M times m makes the m squared. We need two numbers that multiply together to make 11. Well, that's easy because 11 is a prime number. It's got to be 1 times 11. Now we just need to watch the signs. When this third number is positive, that means both terms or both numbers in the middle here will have the same sign, because you need a negative times negative to make that positive, or a positive times positive to make a positive. But since we're adding up to negative 12 in the middle, that tells me both of those will become negative. In this next problem, we see that we're using the variable n, so I will put an n at the beginning of each parentheses, and I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to make 16, and they will be 4 and 4. They multiply to 16 and they add up to 8. Now when you get the same thing showing up in both parentheses, we prefer that we write this as n plus 4 quantity squared, and that actually has a name. It's called a binomial square for obvious reasons. Each of these problems we've been dealing with have had a 1 as a leading coefficient. Now we're changing gears, like I told you at the start of the video, and we've got a different number out front. Now I cannot just start my two parentheses and say, hey, y and y. We're lucky that 7 is a prime number, because we're going to have 7y and 1y. But I cannot, please let me emphasize this, say, 1 times 10, 2 times 5, and find a pair of those that are going to add up to 9. It's not going to work that way anymore, because now we've got this leading coefficient. So I'm either going to have 1 and 10, or 10 and 1, or 2 and 5, or 5 and 2. And the more often you do these, the better you're going to get. And you need to check your inner and outers and make sure everything's going to work here. Notice that if you go 1 and 10, the outer term of FOIL is going to give you 7 on the left times 10 over here, which is 70. And then you'd have a 1 in the middle. 70 and 1 are not going to make a 9 when you add them together. So that's not your possibility. If you go with 10 and 1, 7 times 1 is 7. And then we'd have an inner of 10. 7 and 10 are not going to make that 9 either. Likewise, when I go 7 times 5, 35, that's a little bit large also. So I'm going to try this last combination of 5 and 2. On the outer, I have a 14y. On the inner, I have a 5y. Now I want them to add up to be a 9y, so if this was a positive 14 and a negative 5, then I've got 14 minus 5 is 9, and that will work. So I want the minus in the first parentheses to make this minus 5y, and I want the plus in the second parentheses so that I have a plus 14y, and notice that the negative 5 times the positive 2 does make a negative 10 there. This really is the only answer, and if you've got these middle signs reversed, it really is wrong. It tells your teacher you did not check the signs of your middle terms adding together.